and several videos of the scene showed colored flashes in the flames.
I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay, we're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay.
And then roughly 30 seconds later, this enormous shock. The blast struck with the force of a 3.5 magnitude earthquake.
The Colombian ELN guerrillas are in trouble after President Trump and U.S. forces obliterated a storage unit linked to the terrorist group. The explosive attack came just days before Maduro's capture, and with the narco-dictator now in U.S. custody, investigators have exposed his link to the ELN Colombian terrorist group. The rebel commanders are now scrambling to flee back across the border into Colombia because they know Trump is coming for them all. So now, the question is, if the U.S. forces could capture Maduro, how far can they really run?
The Trump administration refers to these people not only as guerrillas, but also as narco-terrorists, and has not discarded the possibility of attacking them on Colombian soil.
Colombian security forces will likely crack down on the ELN in response to the latest attack. Many fear that a new escalation of violence will further eliminate the hopes of ending more than 5 decades of conflict.
On the 18th of December 2025, residents in the Wayu neighborhoods along the Maracaibo shoreline were fishing for dinner when the loud explosion erupted.
Two eyewitnesses in northwestern Venezuela, in an area known for drug trafficking, tell NBC News that they saw an explosion on December 18th that destroyed a hut that possibly was used for storage. Now, it's not clear if that's the same strike that President Trump mentioned recently when he called which he called a major explosion in a dock area along the shoreline.
Two residents who witnessed the explosion later told NBC News that the blast was so loud it made them go deaf for hours. "I've never seen anything like it," one witness told reporters. "I don't know if it was a missile or a rocket. The truth is, we don't know what it was," a second witness said, "but it was a big explosion."
According to the witness, representatives from the Venezuelan government showed up the morning after they heard the blast around 10 a.m. The witness said local residents asked them for help, for a doctor to check on the hearing problems, and for new fishing nets and hammocks, which had also been blown up.
Interestingly, in the days leading up to the explosion, witnesses also described hearing a strange buzzing sound circling above that they guessed might be a drone surveilling the area. Then, a few days later, everything went white and loud. Now, while people were still trying to understand what had just happened, the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, rushed to social media to make this announcement, quote, "We know Trump bombed a factory in Maracaibo. We believe coca paste is mixed there to make coke." Taking advantage of its location on the waters of Lake Maracaibo, it is simply the ELN. The ELN, through its criminal activity and rigid ideology, is allowing the invasion of Venezuela, Petro wrote on X. Now, for some context, Maracaibo is located in Zulia, a Venezuelan state that has become one of the most important narco corridors in the hemisphere. Dozens of clandestine airstrips, coke laboratories, and warehouses operate there under ELN control, and from those sites, drugs are flown north toward Central America and Mexico. Every step of that supply chain runs through territory where the ELN has protection and political cover. That's most likely why this strike targeted the area. Meanwhile, President Trump announced another strike on a dock in Venezuela that he said was used to load boats up with drugs.
But there was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs. So we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
So, this appeared to be a different strike from the initial one, but we believe they were both aimed at the ELN, and this campaign was all part of a much larger campaign to crush the terrorist organization. So, some of you might already know this, but the ELN is not just a bunch of criminals running around in the mountains.
This is the ELN. It's a leftist anti-government group that is made up of more than 2,000 fighters plus militias, based in the Colombian countryside. The group is a holdout in the country's peace process and is considered a terrorist organization by Colombia and several other governments, including the United States and the European Union.
It is one of the oldest guerrilla movements in Colombia, dating back to the 1960s, but over time, it transformed into a full-scale narco operation powered by coke money.
El conflicto no ha terminado.
ELN is the last active rebel group in the Americas. They negotiated their own agreement, but the dialogue failed last January, and they became public enemy number one of the government after an attack on a police academy that killed 22 cadets.
El último grupo rebelde activo en América.
For decades, the ELN has quietly built itself into one of the most important players in Colombia's economy, not by shipping drugs itself, but by controlling every piece of the smuggling.
The ELN is the new public enemy number one, which was always there, but made invisible. All the attention was on the FARC before. Even some military interventions that we did were attributed to FARC because they needed to promote them as the main enemy. Years ago, we received directions from our national command prohibiting us from crossing the border.
They control the coca crops that farmers depend on to survive. They protect the laboratories where coca paste is turned into cocaine. And they guard the airstrips and border crossings that allow those shipments to disappear into Venezuela. And because Venezuela has become such a critical transit nation, whoever controls those crossings controls the flow of drugs to the rest of the world. ELN controls large parts of Colombia's border with Venezuela, especially in Catatumbo, one of the most violent and drug-saturated regions on the continent. This place holds some of the largest coca fields on the planet, and every kilo of coke produced there is meant for export. Colombian forces have raided lab after lab in that area, seizing hundreds of kilos of finished coke, thousands of gallons of chemical inputs, and entire stockpiles of processing equipment that belong to ELN fronts.
It was one of over 100 labs recently targeted by a joint task force of Colombia's Air Force and anti-narcotics police. This footage shows how officers seized huge quantities of cocaine hydrochloride from 3 rural labs, amounting to over 5 tons of illegal drugs.
And the violence that comes with this is overwhelming. The ELN and dissident factions of the FARC have been locked in a brutal war over who controls the routes that move coke toward Venezuelan territory.
Last week, 2 rebel groups, the National Liberation Army or the ELN, and factions of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia or the FARC began fighting. While they maintained a truce in the strategic border region, for quite some time the two groups clashed over dominance over cocoa plantations and drug smuggling routes just last Thursday. Reports say the conflict turned deadly when the ELN rebels accused civilians of helping their rivals and executed some in their homes. However, the ELN group has instead accused the FARC rebels of murdering civilians.
Even the military is not off limits.
Ambulances rushed to the hospital in the border city of Arauca on Tuesday as doctors struggled to save the life of dozens of soldiers injured following an explosive attack by ELN rebels on a military base. It was the worst attack in months by the 60-year-old rebel organization that operates between Colombia and Venezuela. The rebels fired homemade rockets from a cargo truck, killing 2 soldiers and seriously injuring at least 27 others.
Now, while Colombia fights this war on its soil, Venezuela has allowed the ELN to operate freely across the border. The group is present in at least 8 Venezuelan states and uses that territory as a rear base to hide leadership, move drugs, and run smuggling operations. Their relationship with the Maduro government is a big reason why the ELN became so powerful in the first place. The ELN suppresses opposition in areas it controls, and in exchange, it receives protection and access to criminal revenue streams that benefit senior figures inside Maduro's government. This is part of the reason why the Trump administration began targeting drug boats in the Caribbean. Washington identified the ELN as one of the groups tied to these trafficking routes, and over the last few months, launched repeated strikes against drug vessels moving narcotics out of the region. But instead of backing the crackdown,
the military said in a statement on social media that the strikes targeted, quote, designated terrorist organizations, killing 3 people in the first vessel, 2 in the second boat, and 3 in the third boat.
Petro went to rant online, defending his failed peace strategy and accusing the U.S. of acting without intelligence.
Why do they fire missiles? That's called murder. And it's the murder of young people who should have other opportunities. which we must give them.
I think it's reckless what Petro has been doing, and I think the fact is also that Colombia has been working with the United States in the Caribbean against narco-trafficking for many years with the Orion campaign.
But while he argued, the ELN kept producing record amounts of cocaine and pushing it through Venezuela under Maduro's protection. But the moment Maduro fell, the entire system that kept the ELN safe suddenly collapsed. When U.S. forces captured Nicolas Maduro and sent him to New York to face justice, the shockwave was immediate across the criminal underworld. Bogotá went on full alert as the Colombian government rushed thousands of troops to the 2,200-kilometer border.
You can see behind me the reinforcement from the Colombian side headed towards Venezuela of Colombian military personnel establishing themselves here so as to have a show of force.
Soon, Colombian military intelligence began receiving reports that ELN commanders and FARC dissidents who had been operating from Venezuelan territory were scrambling to flee back across the border into Colombia.
Colombian guerrillas living in Venezuela are now on the run. Sources inside Colombia's armed forces confirm that rebel commanders have begun fleeing Venezuelan territory, scrambling to cross back into Colombia after Washington's dramatic raid.
For years, Bogotá had warned that Venezuela had become a sanctuary for narco-terror kingpins. But now, with Maduro gone, that sanctuary vanished overnight. But Trump did not just stop at Maduro. He took a direct aim at Gustavo Petro, calling him an illegal drug dealer. Petro responded with nationalist rhetoric and threats of resistance, saying,
President Petro issued a statement on social media saying, Trump speaks without knowledge, stop slandering me. If the US bombs, the campesinos will become thousands of guerrillas in the mountains. And if they detain the president, which a large part of the country loves and respects, they will unleash the jaguar of the people.
But his words could not change the reality on the ground. With Maduro removed, the ELN lost the political shield that had allowed it to dominate Zulia, Maracaibo, and the border corridors that made its drug empire possible. Now the group faces pressure from all sides. Colombian forces are already fighting them in Catatumbo. US strikes have crippled their export routes, and the Venezuelan territory they relied on for years is no longer safe. What started with a single explosion in Maracaibo has become something far bigger. The ELN is being forced out of its strongest sanctuary, and the criminal alliance that tied together Maduro, Venezuelan territory, and Colombia's economy is unraveling in real time. Please feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth videos like this. Meanwhile, click on any of the cards on your screen right now to watch more of our videos.